I've been making films for 30 years. My movies have always been a way of exploring subjects of personal interest. When I wondered about religion, I made a film about it. When I realized I was gay, I made a film about it. When I worried about the bomb, I made a film about it. This has become a very expensive form of therapy. A while ago, I tested positive for the HIV virus, and my doctor told me this means the chances are very strong. I'll get AIDS sometime in the years ahead. I was confused because nothing had changed, yet everything had changed. I decided to make a film about it. The nice thing about having a serious disease is that it's okay to say anything you want, and people put up with it. I don't know if it's because they feel sorry for you, the extra cake at the birthday party because you've been sick syndrome, or because they think since you're facing death, you're somehow automatically wiser. Both attitudes should be encouraged, however. I asked Janet Cole if she produced the film, and we started talking to people. The government says there's more than 1 million Americans infected with HIV. We did research interviews with 120 of them. What a strange disease. You're sick, meaning you have a deadly virus, but you're well, meaning you probably don't feel sick. I wanted to know, how are people handling the news? Has being positive changed their lives? How afraid are they of getting AIDS? We eventually chose the stories of 11 men and women who represent a cross-section of the epidemic. As most everybody knows by now, AIDS was first identified in this country as an illness affecting gay men. And as gay men, we were part of a community which itself was young, a community formed from the new sexual awakening in America.
I came out to my parents when I was 13. They were the first people I told. And it gives you an idea of how close we were. I mean, this was a very tightly knit, dysfunctional group. It was, not, and I have very strong positive feelings toward my parents, along with strong negative feelings. But they were the first people I told, and they wanted to be helpful, which meant that they wanted to seek the appropriate medical counsel. And so we went to my family physician, and he recommended a child psychologist. And I came out in that context to my family. I stopped going to the psychologist after a couple of years. I felt it was a gross waste of money and time. And
he didn't cure you?
No.
I grew up in upstate New York. We lived on an old, what used to be a chicken farm, but it wasn't operational for years. My father was a truck driver. I have 2 older brothers and 2 younger sisters, and the family joke is that I'm the transition.
Gay men flocked to the big cities to be part of this new community.
I wanted to, own more real estate in Manhattan than Donald Trump, and my.
You can remember actually wishing that.
Yeah, and now I think back about it and laugh. It's so contrary to how I feel now.
Not big steps, they're gradual steps. I mean, I went about all of this very, very slowly. What was so liberating was the presence of this entire gay community and gay culture and bars and bookstores and, a street that you could go out and sort of walk and look at people, look openly at people that you found attractive. I mean, it didn't mean that you had to do something with them every time you looked, but it was just a joy to be able to, as so many of our heterosexual brothers can, look at someone and just notice and admire, to be able to do that.
They were exuberant times. We were celebrating our newfound pride and freedom. There was a lot of sex back then and a great sense of kinship. And this process of coming out, of finding other gay people, is still happening.
I'd go on the Castro and I'd feel like this bond between all these people, They're walking around going, oh, going on with their lives. I'm gay, nothing, no big deal, It's a part of my life, so what? And I'm here going, wow, a gay book, gay literature, and reading it. And I just felt so free,
I remember the same exhilaration 25 years ago, but for Johnny, there was a big difference. When he, at 17, discovered the gay community, the virus was already there.
I still had in the back of my mind. I only had unsafe sex those few times. There's a slim chance, no. And plus, I'm not sick. I don't have any marks on my body. I haven't been very ill. There's no way. I'm pretty sure I'm negative.
What an irony that the liberation movement, which freed so many, also created such opportunities for transmission of a virus.
I don't even know what year this was but I think my very first experience was I was coming out of the Castro Theater, and my friend said, "That guy with the brown jacket has AIDS." And I remember this total fear coming over me, and just a lot of fear. And they introduced us, a group of people, to one another, and the guy with AIDS made his point to shake hands with everybody there. And I remember it was my first time meeting somebody with AIDS, and the fear, and I didn't want to touch him. I didn't want him to shake my hand. And so I put my hand in my pocket, and I waited till we got to a restaurant so that I could go into the washroom. I felt so sad and so guilty. That someone who was in a place of needing so much compassion and so much understanding, that I wanted to run away and I didn't even want to touch him. And I remember thinking, God, this guy is so beautiful and so powerful, the way he put his hand out to everybody. And I thought, I wonder if he knows what I'm thinking. I wonder if he knows what I'm thinking. I wonder if he knows how afraid I am.
As time progressed, we found out more and more about how AIDS was transmitted, and I had had unsafe sex in the early 80s up until about 83 in New York, including passive anal sex without condoms, and assumed that I was probably exposed.
I was in Germany a year ago about this time, actually just right after Christmas, and suddenly became very ill. Couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, sweating, chills, vomiting, bathroom, everything, just sort of violent. Was visiting my family at that time and went to the hospital, and they diagnosed kidney failure. Both kidneys had failed. Still don't know why. I asked immediately, is this HIV related? When I was in the hospital, still in my sort of shocked, dazed state, because I was on dialysis and all kinds of drugs. And they say, we don't think so, but we've tested you, and you're positive.
About a year ago, I was in the bathroom, and I was brushing my teeth, and I noticed something on my tongue. It was very, very little. It was on the side of my tongue, but I hated it. Okay, I took one look at it and I couldn't stand it, and I got really upset. And I went to a very good friend of mine with whom I had worked, closely and affectionately for years. And I said, listen, do me a favor, come in the other room. I have something I want you to look at. And I showed him the side of my tongue, and the expression on his face. He had a bad expression on my face when I asked him if he wanted to look at my tongue. But when he saw what was on my tongue, he had a very, very disturbed expression on his face. The, oh, fuck expression.
He looked at me and he said, in a very soft voice, because I knew it was rough for him. I don't know how these counselors do it. You are positive. And then I felt this it was like the feeling of getting an F on the report card, like you did something bad and you're really gonna pay for it, rush of being scared. And then I didn't know a whole lot about AIDS, so I thought I was gonna die in a month. the thought of dying that's not what made me cry. And I wasn't crying because I was scared. I was crying because I was predicting the pain my friends and family would have when they find out, and, you know, and the pain the fact is going to cause them. And that made me cry. That made me feel really bad.
Did your mother or your brother ever wonder why that you were acting strange? Or
I kept it pretty hidden, you know. They didn't even notice any change in my mood or anything. You know, neither did my friends.
Huh. So you didn't tell anybody that you knew?
No.
And when's the first time, I gather you still haven't told your mother.
No. No.
I grew up so Catholic. I mean, I was doing it so right, Janet, that I had never been to a gay porno movie. I'd never seen a gay porno movie, even on a video. I'd never gone to a porno house. I've never gone to a bathhouse. I wasn't sleeping with 8 bazillion guys. I mean, so I shouldn't be touched by AIDS. You know what I mean? Like, this is the level of thought that was going on in my mind. I think that goes on for a lot of people around when they're diagnosed. Oh, it's because of that evil stuff I did in the bathhouse. It's because this and this and this. And so what I love telling people when I hear all that loaded guilt stuff, I said, look it. I feel like I'm like Andy of Mayberry, and I am diagnosed HIV positive. I mean, cut yourself some slack. I was about as angelic and white bread as you can get, so I thought. I mean, I was doing it right. You know, my idea of love was 2 people in a room with the windows closed, and there's 2 people in that bed, and they're going to be together forever and ever. I'm HIV positive. What happened?
These stories all had a familiar ring because they are my story. We all shared the 2 biggest events of our lives, coming out and testing positive. It's estimated that 50% of the gay men in San Francisco are positive. The epidemic is also rooted within another population which evolved in the mid-60s. Drug use skyrocketed during the Vietnam War. The greatest effect was in the inner city.
Well, I was born and raised in Brooklyn, Williamsburg. I was born in the Greenpoint Hospital, 1952. I come from a family of 6 women, including myself, no brothers. I went to school in Williamsburg, straight to high school.
At 14, Alice got pregnant and moved in with her boyfriend.
He went to work, and I went and I hung out around the high school that I had attended, and that's how my day would go. And I would run home at 3 o'clock in the afternoon to be this grown-up, you know, and cook dinner and act like I was being a housewife all day, and it was like real confusing, and it was like really, I was doing something I really didn't want to do and didn't know how to do.
Within the year, Alice began using heroin.
I got a habit, and I became my best customer. And then I became my only customer, and the relationship came to an end, and then I wasn't able to work because I didn't have it like that to work. I would get up in the morning and it was about hitting the cooker, you know, and chasing that drug.
I was an IV drug user at the time, and it was discussed among people in shooting galleries. You know, everybody would discuss AIDS and how you got it. Although the information was real sketchy, we knew about it, but it never curtailed any of the behavior at all.
How was it talked about?
it was just, you know, have you seen so-and-so? They don't look good, you know, they look really sick. Maybe he has AIDS, you know, they're saying you can get it from needles. We should use bleach, ha ha ha, you know, nobody ever did. And it was generally, you know, you'd see somebody and they looked really bad, or you'd hear about somebody dying, you know, and then the rumors would start whether or not it was AIDS.
It's not, there's a stereotype as to who has it. Has it? Well, that's tacky. You know, who tests positive and who has acquired this disease. You know, I mean, I'm like, I think I represent a fairly average group. You know, I'm black. I have a husband, kids. You know, we thought we were pretty average, go to church every Sunday, and through the week, we work, we call ourselves, but, you know, we had a bit of a history that we thought was behind us, which a lot of people probably might think. And we had all but blocked it out of our minds because, you know, life had completely changed in the last 6, 7 years. So what do? You block it out, but who's to say that it's going to come back and haunt you like that? That's what I call it.
I went in to get my results, and he told me, you know, are you ready for this? I said, everybody, about as ready as I'm ever going to get, and I thought it was about the coolest thing. And he told me your results came back positive. And he told me, well, I suggest that you get involved in some type of group. And he started telling me a bunch of stuff. I don't really know what the hell he was telling me. I know he was telling me a lot of things that were good for me, but I wasn't listening to any of it, you know. My focus wasn't that I was positive, and I guess that I was going to die. I think that was like my biggest concern, but I couldn't feel it, you know. And on my way back to the facility that I was in, I was riding in the van, and we were taking the bloods back to Bellevue, and then the van was going to drop me off at the facility, and I was thinking how I was not going to tell anybody that I had gotten a positive result. Nobody needed to know. You know, if I told anybody, I was going to have to sit in groups and talk about it. I didn't want to talk about it.
I called up everybody I had been sexually involved with in the last couple of years, and I told them, you know, that I was positive, please go get tested. I got really good reactions from everyone except my ex-husband, who refused to believe it, said it was because I hung out with gay people. I mean, he believed that, you know, I had this, that I probably definitely had given it to him, that I would probably be dead in a year. You know, that was his feeling, and that's how he reacted to it, which was like pulling back, refused to have any kind of sexual relations with me.
Even sex?
Oh, no, not at all. Nothing. And, you know, basically talking about how he'd make the last year really nice. And I kind of bought into it for a while until I realized that if all I have is a year, I'm not going to live it like this.
A year later, Mary met her current husband, Billy.
I think what he thought...
This epidemic has brought together eclectic groups of people whose names seem to have been pulled out of some kind of celestial hat. If you got a transfusion sometime in the late 70s or early 80s, there was no way of knowing that your name had been placed in that hat.
He'd gotten a letter from the hospital where he'd had the surgery 3.5 years, almost 3.5 years later, informing him that he possibly had gotten contaminated blood, and if he would like, he could come to the hospital, and for $16, they would run the tests to verify. How nice of them.
Then I went to my doctor finally, and he told me, he said, "Oh, don't worry about it." He said, "I've done hundreds of these tests, and only 2 of them come back positive." And then when he got mine back, that was 3.
Because Margie may have been sexually infected by Delmar, she decided to get tested.
I don't know where the devil Delmer was, but somehow I got in the house first, and it just so happened that 3 of my kids were here. And I came in the house saying, "You're never gonna effing well believe it, but I'm dying." And that's how I informed them.
Why do you think you, some people's reaction might be to keep it quiet and sort of go into themselves rather than blurt it out to their children or something. Why do you think that was your reaction?
I think probably because I'm an angry person.
Juan was also infected by a heterosexual partner.
When I met her, she had stopped. She had about 4 years without using. She was in good health, except for minor, things.
Juan's wife, Grisela, had an early history of drug use. Neither had any idea that she was left infected. While Juan was serving in the Army, he was notified that she had suddenly died back in Puerto Rico.
I went downstairs to the morgue. The guy didn't want to let me see her. My uncle was there, and 2 of my uncles, my mother. So what I did was I just pushed through him. And I went up to the refrigerator door, and they had a glass, and I looked through, and it was her, she was laying there. Remember her hair, you know what I mean? The blanket, she was real skinny. And I turned around, and the guy woke up. And he says, he looked at me, and I said, "Where's her book? Where's the book?" And he says, "You're looking for Grisela and all this other stuff." And I said, "Yeah." So when he showed me her name, right next to it, it said cause of death. And it had large, like with a highlighter, AIDS. That's why
Juan returned to the base in Germany, where he tested positive.
He comes home as a, quote, healthy baby. He begins to get sick. He came home in March. He began to get sick in August.
Doris had no idea she was positive when she gave birth to his son, Jared. The baby was constantly sick, but no one could figure out why. He had tested negative for HIV once, but in desperation, the doctors tested him again.
He had been at the doctor so much and been so sick that I never needed an appointment at that point. When we would come, we'd just go in. We'd go there, and the nurse put us in a room. The doctor would be in like a few minutes. Man, what he was doing, he'd come see Jared because he knew he'd probably be real sick. But this particular day, this dude didn't come in for like 10 or 15 minutes. And I'm like, what's up? What's taking him so long? So my husband gets real quiet. He's already quiet, but he gets real quiet. And he said, "What do you think is up?" So he said, "You think something happened with that test?" I said, "No, the 14 days been up." So when we go, we sit back. He's just busy. And then we get a knock at the door, and he had a social worker with him. And when I saw this social worker, I said, "Help me, Jesus, because I know what the deal is." That was really the hardest time to deal with then. And he really didn't have to say a lot. And he knew he didn't. Anyway, so.
Tell me what he said.
He said, Jared, I got Jared's test results back. And me and my husband looked at each other. And then my husband turned, I think, and faced the wall. I'm trying to remember, I can't remember. And I just fell down on the chair and said, but you know, that's the only time. And look at me now, and I'm sitting there saying, that's the only time, but look at me now. That's the only time I really fell apart about it. I remember that. And it might be hard to believe looking at me right this second, but when I think about that particular moment, it's the only time that really hurts a whole bunch. We didn't tell our daughter, and we decided on the way home, we made this pact. Wasn't nobody gonna know, because people will hate us.
Months later, Tess would confirm that Doris was positive and her husband negative.
So, we made a real pact about that.
I know I have HIV, but I don't realize it. Experts agree that it's important to do something to slow down the virus as soon as possible. The only concession I've made to the disease is that I'm taking AZT and doing Chinese herbs. I'm having trouble accepting that HIV is now a part of who I am. Growing up, misfortune was always over there. Those poor starving people in India. Or the neighbor's daughter born with 3 fingers missing. And that crazy lady who lives across the street. But now it's not over there. It's in here. So everything has changed. Yet, most of the time I catch myself thinking, oh, those poor people who are going to get AIDS.
You like applesauce, Izzy? Easy to digest? Okay. If your sister came, would you stay in bed today? What? I said, if your sister came, you wouldn't stay in bed.
Why not?
Because she would beat the hell out of you. She would knock you on the head. Huh? What do you think? You want to try to get out of bed a little bit?
No.
All right. If you insist, but I'm going to try to keep it in mind for later now. It was a very difficult decision to participate in this film. The disclosure that one is HIV positive is what I would consider quintessential bad news. It's just nothing you damn well want to hear about somebody that you care about. I remember just recently I was talking with a woman at work and I was asking her about filming at work. And I said to her, I'm having a real problem. I'm trying to figure out how to politically negotiate how to get the cameras to come to work so that they can film me, because they're doing a documentary about HIV positives, and I'm HIV positive. It was so false and so unfair. I felt so, after I said that and I saw the reaction of my coworker, whom I love, she cried, her eyes filled with tears. And I realized that it's such bad news. You have to say, sit down, I've got something to tell you. That is a big deal. I mean, it's not how I want to, choose to live my life. There's so many good things happening. I don't want to give people bad news. That's not my personality.
So is this a solution to get it all over with at once and tell everybody in one fell swoop?
I'm hoping nobody sees the program. I mean, that's my hope. My hope is that, the night that this is on is a blackout in New York City, or the Super Bowl, or, something really worthwhile is on the TV, the Academy Awards. That'll wipe out a lot of people if they're, if it's on opposite the Academy Awards. Hi, Izzy, darling. Izzy's going to be a star in the film, too.
He just said they're making a film and he's on it.
Look.
Whoa, hey.
He is the star. He is the star. They're going to make a remake of Gone with the Wind. They want Izzy to play the Clark Gable role. And me, I guess I'll have to be Scarlet, huh? You didn't finish your applesauce? After all that trouble? It must have taken me 4 hours to make it. I don't know. If it's not a prosthesis, and it's not a denture, and it's not on the list.
You will have to tape
Jewelry removed.
Yes. You have to tape it.
I'll tape it.
You
Okay.
have to tape them down.
Taped. Tit rings taped. They don't have one for that. All clothing removed. I'm going to write tit rings, nipple rings, bilateral nipple rings. Bilateral
Rings.
nipple rings. Yeah. And what do I do? Cloth tape for that?
Tape. Yeah. You have to tape them into place.
I made a very conscious decision that AIDS was not going to kill me. I decided I was going to drink myself to death.
You were going to get hit, huh?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'd be damned if I was going to succumb to this damn disease. I would go out laughing and enjoying myself, and I would drink and drink and drink and drink.
Was it fun?
For a while. And then it became not fun. Just not fun at all. And
what was Delmer's participation in this, if any?
he's done pretty much the same thing. Pretty much the same thing. In fact, there before we quit drinking, he had decided he wanted to become a bartender so he could drink all the mistakes that he could make.
I mean, it's funny now, but I was different than my wife. Now, she wanted to read, when she found out she was positive, she wanted to read everything concerning this. She wanted to know, and it's been a great help to me and my doctor. But she wanted to read everything, and I didn't even want to hear the word. I didn't want to hear it on TV. I didn't want to see it on TV. I didn't want to see it in the paper. I mean, denial. I'd shut the TV off. Come on, you know.
You find out this information and you're crushed. You crumble, you know. And then you talk to people, kind of put yourself back together. And then once you're kind of sort of back together, that's when you get courage.
And what would you call your first act of courage?
Going to the group.
What was that like? Tell me about it. Why was it courageous?
Because I was actually doing something about this. I could have just sat at home, not tell anybody forever. Not tell anybody forever.
I think most of the hard moments that I've had are having to explain to my daughter what I have.
How did you do that?
I sat her down, and I had taped a number of AIDS specials that were done for children on television. And we watched them. And afterwards I said, do you understand, that I'm HIV positive, which this is what it means. And also, we have a lot of friends who are also infected, so there's a lot of AIDS talk around the house. And I said, and yes, and she asked me, does this person have it? Does this person have it? And I'd say, yes, does my dad have it? And I said, no, Billy doesn't have it. And that was really hard, because for her, it meant that she had to confront the fact that maybe I won't be here forever. And I had to confront the fact that maybe, I won't get to see her do things that normally maybe I would have.
I think as my body began to change in small ways, as I developed rashes here and there that would come and inexplicably go away, as my eyes would sometimes get very red for no reason, or my skin would seem sort of strange to me compared to how it had been. I realized that there was a metamorphosis going on here, and obviously going on internally and now beginning to manifest itself externally. And that became harder. That became harder to deal with.
I was mad about things like why did I have to have so many friends? Why do I have to be in so many things, or what are these people going to do when they find out? 'Cause I was close to so many people. And all I could think about was losing those people. And the one thing that scared me most was about my church. One of the deacons at our church came and picked up me and my son and my daughter for a barbecue. So we go over their house, and boy, this really hurts because when I think back on it. So we're over there and we're all sitting around the table, and the kids are fighting about they want some more Kool-Aid, okay? And they don't know whose cup is whose. And they're fighting about, no, that's my cup, that's my cup. So the hostess, who I'm sitting next to, Kelly Sonoda, says, would y'all stop fighting over that cup? It don't matter who drinks out the cup. Ain't nobody around here got no AIDS. And boy, and poor Kelly, my daughter, she froze. And she was just completely, I could see, just completely, and I could see where you could see something was wrong. And so they distract them from noticing her reaction. I called the attention of one of the kids that were running out of the gate. And the little kid saw her, she's going out the gate. But, boy, that went right through me like a knife.
It was hard for me to keep it hidden, you know. I was going through a lot of turmoil with everybody, you know.
Juan had a perfect Army record until he tested positive. Distraught by the news and the need to keep it secret, he got into a terrible fight outside the canteen and was sentenced to the brig.
It wasn't like that. As soon as I got there the next day, man, people would ask me, you know. I remember this guy asking me, are you gay, you know? And I'm like, why? You know? And he didn't want to say nothing. There was guys screaming from the cells under me, you know? They got somebody upstairs with AIDS, and they got faggots in here, and this and that, right?
What'd you say?
Nothing.
Was the only reason that you kept it secret, the HIV secret, because you were afraid of that there would be violence, or were you afraid just what people would think?
Part of it is what they would think, yes. That worried me a lot.
What? Talk to me about that.
That they'd think I was a whore, you know. That I was asleep about, you know. Things like that. And I certainly didn't want it reflecting back on my girls who were still living here at home. I figured life was tough enough without, you know, having other people judge them because of their mother's, what probably would be considered promiscuous behavior. And I wasn't like that.
Did you ever blame yourself for being positive?
Possibly for a while, I suppose. Eventually, I guess, yeah. I think, if we're all honest, I think those of us that are living with this disease, I think we all probably somewhere try to examine, well, gee, do I really deserve this? I think it's probably human nature.
I have a lot of friends who share with me what a positive and beautiful and grateful experience it is for them. They all work with AIDS, and they're doing a lot of great work. And there's a part of me that doesn't feel sometimes that grateful. I don't feel so, I feel like I was doing a good job before. And there's definitely a part that feels like this anger at God. There's this part that comes up, my gift of my Catholic upbringing, where all I think for myself is that, God, wasn't I doing it good enough? You know, what was I doing wrong? Where it still can feel sometimes like a punishment. I can still feel sometimes like a judgment.
One of the fears that I have now is that, and one of the things I try to do now, I try to keep as many people as possible now from being bothered with Jared. People are always trying to hold him when I have him at church. Or, you know, if he's a little sick, I'll leave him home. But a lot of Sundays I have to take him with me. They want to pick him up and hug him and kiss him. And I try to hold back from that because I'm afraid that when some of them find out, they're going to say, well, she should have told me so I could have made a choice whether I wanted to hug him and kiss him. She should have... Someone might be scared because of their uneducation about it. And they're going to be real mad at me about that. They're going to be upset that I didn't tell them because maybe they had the right to know because we are all so close. You know, we hug every Sunday. And some of them are going to have going to be a legitimate fear with them.
Is it legitimate since they can't get AIDS that way?
There you go. You got me. You're right. But they don't know that. They don't know that.
One thing is clear. I want the time I've left here to be my time. But how do you live in a room with a monster? How do you just go about your life? I tried denying his presence, but I kept bumping into the beast. And now that I fully admit he's here, I worry I'll become obsessed, jumping at his every twitch and move. Is there a balance between denial and obsession? The only answer is to coexist with this monster. Learn how to eat out of the same bowl.
Yeah.
Say a word.
You can even say a word if you want. Sit on this side. He's talking about how you met.
Okay, I'm up to the part about when I was feeding you and telling you my life history. On my way to work, I would drive up to the place that she was staying at.
Which was a girl's home.
Yeah, and she would look out the window and I'd look at her and I'd wave and stuff like that.
So you're already flirting.
Yeah, flirting. That's you could call it that.
Who flirted the most?
She did.
You both agree.
After I got out of the group home, I didn't have any other place to stay. Everybody was kicking me out, and so the last time I got kicked out, I was living with a friend. She was gonna move, and I had to go. So he decided to take me to his mother's house. Stay over there.
My mom, she's pretty understanding,
Was she?
Yeah. She had a small apartment herself, but yet, she still wanted to help.
And how long have you had this place? Is this the first place you had together?
Yes.
Heaven?
Yeah, heaven.
It's ours.
We met initially, and it was kind of, I guess, love at first sight at kind of the premier dance palace of gay New York, the Saint. There was this gorgeous blonde standing there with this huge smile, and it was one of these like, whoa, where did you come from? And he noticed me and kind of smiled at me. And, during that whole show, I kept every now and then looking back and catching his eye. you know, he would smile or wink, and
Eric and Scott didn't meet that night. But by coincidence, several months later, a mutual friend introduced them.
When I came, you know, back, I called him up and asked him to go out to dinner alone. And, you know, it was the first time we had been together in you know, a dating kind of situation. And we spent the night together. And from then on, you know, we were in love. And the irony of it all was that 6 weeks later, Scott was diagnosed with AIDS. He said, look, there's something I want to tell you. I got the results back from the doctor today, even though he'd really gotten them back on Friday, and you know, told me, you know, it was definite that he had AIDS. And you know, we sat in the park and I cried my eyes out, and he tried to reassure me, which that was Scott.
I had waited all those years we had been together, almost 9 years, before I even finally gave him this son. And he was so happy to have one. And then for him to be sick. And I felt like that because I was the one that was positive, that it was my fault and that he somehow blamed me for it, but wasn't saying so. And that's why when he started staying out and whatnot, I started believing that he was through with me.
I think it would be impossible for someone with HIV who learns that fact, who is in a relationship, it would be impossible for that fact, that knowledge, not to affect the relationship. I think in terms of my relationship, which is now 10 years old, with my lover, it's in many ways brought us closer. At the same time, it's created a certain wedge within the relationship because he is negative, I'm positive. We're a mixed couple in several ways in that he's also white, and I'm black, of course. So there's that additional wedge there where he faces the prospect, you know, of losing a lover. Yet again, actually, because 2 previous lovers, ex-lovers, have died of AIDS. I face sort of the burden of thinking I don't want to do anything that would endanger his health. So in some ways it drives a wedge in the relationship that I think is a constant point of potential friction, at least a constant point of trying to resolve and to sort of break through. At the same time, though, because I think a sense of the finality of life, which is always there, except it's usually not something we think about, but because it's now there in a much more, you know, in a much clearer, sharper fashion, we can't ignore this. It makes us much more appreciative of each other.
I remember making love to her, and right afterwards, having this guilt, you know, of wanting it to be open.
You weren't having safe sex, obviously.
No. And I, you know, it's like back then I was drinking heavily. I wasn't going to know any support groups at all. And, I had full denial, you know. Although I knew it was dangerous, I didn't want to accept it. But it came to the point where it was like she was telling me, you know. Go ahead.
I don't know if you're gonna believe this or not, but I was sort of awake, right? I was awake. I was hearing everything that was going on around me, and I saw pictures in my head. I was seeing pictures, and I saw him telling me, sitting down on a couch or something, telling me, you know, I'm HIV positive, He told me in my
This was
dream.
a dream that you had?
Like a dream, but I was still awake, you know. So he came over that night, and I said, "You never believe this, but you know, this is real strange. I had a dream that you told me you were HIV positive, you know." And he just looked at me, and he called me a witch. Yeah. And I started laughing. I was like, "Nah, that's not true. This is one of my stupid things, you know. I made it up, you know." And he got drunk. That night, he got really, really drunk. And he pulled me into my room, and he said, "Listen, I'm gonna tell you." And he started telling me about his past, and you know, and he all of a sudden he told me I am.
Did you have to negotiate safe sex?
And we had to talk about it.
Whose idea was it?
I think it was his. Because a lot of the times with my problems and everything, I guess I was really telling myself, I don't care if I die. You know, because I was running back and forth. I felt nobody wanted me. Nobody cared for me. You know? Here I was, and life didn't mean anything to me. And I don't care if I die. I don't care if anything happens to me. You know? He reached over and grabbed a condom, and I take it and throw it away. Can you believe that? I take it and just throw it away.
How come?
One, because I wanted to show him I wasn't afraid. Right?
This was a way of like proving your love, maybe?
My mind, my head was like going around in circles.
We've been told we should take some precautions until he found out what the results of his tests were. He was too embarrassed to go and buy them. And somewhere along about that time, my feelings of self-worth were like about yay. And I permitted us to have sex without condoms. In other words, I wasn't willing to be responsible enough to say, not unless. But neither was I willing to go and buy the condoms. I was as embarrassed as he was, in other words, and just not willing to take the responsibility. And then he went out hunting with his friend from McKinleyville, and he cut himself. And he took every precaution to take care of his friend so that his friend didn't come in any contact with his blood, and told his friend why. And he come back home and he related this to me. And I was furious. I was just so furious. I could have wrung his neck. I wanted to throttle him. I really did. And we got into a terrible, terrible fight. I called him every dirty name I think I'd ever heard in the book, in every language I could think of, and said, "How dare you care about your friend so much that you'll protect him, but you won't protect me by using a condom."
One day, he said he was going out to get my son some tennis shoes. Or he was going. Anyway, he was going out. And he went and checked himself into a drug program. After he'd been in there a while, he said to me, when he was able to talk to me, he said that he didn't know what to do when he realized that he was losing his wife and his son, that he didn't think he could hang. He didn't think he could hang. So he left the weight of it on me. But I guess I should be thankful that he's where he's at, and that he's come through it, and he is back on his road up. But you know, I don't have this strength sometimes to deal with him getting through his recovery Jared being sick, me being sick, and a teenage daughter that is being a teenager. You know? Who helps me?
You had only known each other 6 weeks, right, when he was diagnosed. Did it ever occur to you to say, look, I don't need this. He's going to be dying, and he's a new lover. Let me gracefully bow out. He had a lover.
Yeah, I mean, I actually went through a period like that, and that was exactly what I was, thinking. And I had a conversation to that very point with one of my best friends. He said, would you be with him if he wasn't sick? And I said, of course. And he said, well, why deny, the two of you the chance to love each other and to be really happy just because one of you's sick? And, doesn't it seem to make the most sense that if Scott is sick, the thing he should have most is love? And I said, yeah, you're right. And I said, I think having even 2 years, having Scott as a lover for even only 2 years would probably be, more important than loving just about anybody else for 20. And how
long was it?
It was just about 2 years. And oddly enough, the next day, Scott called me up and said, look, I got to come talk to you. I may need you to support me. Can you be there? And I said, I love you more than anything, and I want to be there for you. And I asked him to move in with me. And so he decided to go back and break up with Paul, and actually flew back to California with Paul to kind of help him adjust to the breakup. And when he got back, started moving in. And that is really what changed my life. Loving Scott, having Scott as a lover, and losing him to AIDS completely changed my life.
I don't understand these things called feelings, and how sometimes feeling so much pain can also feel like so much amazing happiness. And I think it's that there's a place that in that pain where the heart gets to break, and it breaks open and it actually allows some kind of freedom. And I remember the few days that my friend Will was in the hospital. And this is someone who had been in remission for years from KS. And all of a sudden he got like these flu symptoms, and it didn't turn around. And so then he was in the hospital, and by the time I got to see him, he wasn't, he was still coherent, but he wasn't, he was out there. His brain and his consciousness was doing some different stuff, and it wasn't exactly the Will who I had known. And for those 2 days of being with him when he was dying, they were like two of the happiest days I remember probably in the last 5 years. And I can't understand why, but that I just felt so much love. I think of the people I've had several lovers die, or some of my friends who've known people who have like 20 some odd people who have died. I think nobody knows that. Nobody knows what those people have gone through. Nobody knows the amazing strength and the love and the generosity that those people have. And these awful gay people that this world thinks of, and the amazing angels that they are, and the amazing love that they've been for their friends.
Is HIV fatal? This is a question doctors and scientists are obsessed with, and yet we're told if you're positive, this is a question you're not supposed to think about. Not good for your health. Researchers say that if you've been infected a long time, your chances are not very good. The average time for serious symptoms to appear is 11 years. So if you were infected more recently, your chances of being here when they find a cure are much better. I have friends that say HIV has become a manageable illness. Like diabetics, most of us will survive. And these friends object when I refer to myself as having a fatal disease. But I feel there's more glory in surviving a fatal disease than dying of a manageable one.
I started falling apart there for a minute.
How?
Feeling sorry for myself, crying. I'd cry about, I got to the point where I was tripping about the worst things. Pork chops. Now you start tripping about pork chops. Now you got a problem.
What do you mean?
I sent him to the store to get center cuts, and he come back with rib, and I cried all night. Now you know that's deep. I mean, things like that, when things like that get to have you crying all night, then you know you got a problem. You know? So, I mean, and I was just always arguing, always crying, and just felt so sorry for myself. Wouldn't do nothing.
How'd you get out of it?
When he left, I had no choice. When he went into his program. I mean, I was the only thing that my kids had. And I had to keep my household together. All of a sudden, income was cut. I had my house, I had my kids, and I wasn't working. I just had my disability. And I had to keep it going. And my biggest fear, and one thing I always remember that I heard on a documentary is that you are always one paycheck away from homelessness. And honey, I said, well, it's time for me to get busy and take care of things. I had to.
I haven't told my friends yet. I'm going to tell them by the time this gets out. It's just a matter of the right time and the right place. My friend Cindy, she asks me in a coffee shop. In a coffee shop, they sell coffee beans there. We were waiting in line at the cash register. You're negative, right? It's not the right time or place. And I just said, oh yeah, don't worry about it. What am I supposed to say? Cindy, I'm positive. In the middle, we were standing in line of this place. I mean,
did it piss you off?
No. I was just thinking, Cindy, really? Get a clue. She was, I guess, it just proved to me how sure she was I was negative, you know. But I imagine telling him in a park somewhere, a peaceful setting, just us alone.
The fact that you were positive actually contributed to your cleaning up?
Yes, it did.
Talk about that. I mean, you would think that if you had been escaping, and correct me if you don't like my language, but you'd been escaping reality or whatever, medicating yourself all these years, when you get that big news, you've got a fatal disease, or what people will call a fatal disease, then that's the real time to start medicating yourself, it seems to me.
No, it's not. It's a time where I woke up and I said, you know what? I don't know how much time I have to live, and I know that I don't want to die, and if I want to experience some of those good things that other people experience, I need to stay clean. And yes, I started clinging on to anything that I possibly could. that can help me change. Matter of fact, Denise Ripple told me about it. She says, Alice, Body Positive is looking for somebody that's Hispanic and of color and gay and HIV positive. And it was like, she says, Alice, it's like the sharpest cut out for you.
Yes, no, Body Positive.
You get people on the hotline that don't know anything about the virus, okay, and feel exactly the way that I felt when I first got my diagnosis.
What group did you sign for?
Because I was really scared. I was at a point where I was just following whatever suggestions anybody gave to me. And I started connecting with women that were positive like myself. Some of them did have AIDS. Some of them were in ARC stages. But they all look healthy, you know. They all had this glow about them, you know. They were all full of life, you know, and looking forward to other things in their lives, you know, and going on vacations and working, you know, and taking care of their families and starting relationships and others ending relationships. And it was like, and life goes on.
Maybe a good place to begin would be just a kind of a history from when we last did an interview. I just listened to the interview. You never said, I'm going to beat this, like some people do. But you were certainly optimistic. Are you still optimistic?
I'm relatively optimistic about the whole thing, but for me, there's been a touch of realism in that my diagnosis was changed from positive to full-blown AIDS.
Isn't it hard not to get angry? Why you? Why this disease?
Well, I mean, I know why this disease. You know, I got this disease because I put a rig in my arm, you know, that was dirty. So, I mean, that's what I did. That's how I got it, you know, and why? You know, I don't know why. I don't think there's an answer to every question in this universe, you know, and I think you can just make yourself, I don't believe it's a CIA plot, you know. I can't believe that, you know, and if it is, you know, then we all need to be united and go do something to the CIA, go bite them or something, you know. But I don't believe there's like an answer to every question in the universe, you know, and so I ask the ones that I need to know so I can live at peace with myself.
After becoming pregnant, Beverly got tested. Miraculously, both she and the baby, Crystal, are negative.
When I went to the support group down here, they taught me on ways to break the news to people. You know, they taught me that I didn't have to do it by myself. You know, that there's other people that feel just like I do. And they taught me the importance of safe sex, you know, that it doesn't mean that you're not making love to that person. It means that you love that person. Because some people think that because you're wearing a rubber and you're doing all these little things, that it kills the moment, you know. I think that all depends on how you look at that person, you know. I don't know. They sort of got through to me, you know, where I really was living, you know. In front of this mask that I had in front of me for so many years, they got to the other side of me that was saying, I need to be loved, you know. I'm afraid of dying, you know. That was one thing I didn't want to face up to. They taught me it's okay to be afraid. You gotta let that out once in a while. But it's not okay just to sit down and wait for it. You know, you gotta still look for your future goals and be you. You know.
Do you ever get mad at him that he didn't tell you sooner?
Sometimes when I get depressed. And when I get depressed, And he makes me mad. I get mad at him. And I start thinking about the past and everything.
How do you guys deal with that?
We don't talk to each other.
There's a moment of silence.
We just leave each other alone. And I go into the bedroom, straighten out my head, right? I talk to myself. I do everything, you know. He stays over here, he smokes his cigarettes, watches television, and then I come out and say, "Are you ready to talk?" You know. And we sit down, maybe far away from each other, and we start talking little by little.
I will sit and talk about things, and she gets irritated at me, like, you know, when I get the money for this property, man, I'm going to get this, and I'm gonna, you know, and build a fence and build a bigger porch and all this. But I'm just talking for my own good. Most of it, 99% of it, is bullshit. It's just something that once I say it, it's gone, you know. And no, I don't plan too far ahead. I don't know. We plan like first of next month, you know, to go to Rogue River and you know, things like this. But if it don't happen, that's all right too.
He had gotten a pass from his program that he was in. He came to church last Sunday. And of course, he hadn't been to church in almost 6 months. And I didn't know he was coming. And after the choir marched in, I was up in the choir stand. I looked down and I saw him. And I noticed he just stared at me for the longest. So anyway, that night after he went back to his place and he called me, he said, "You know, I looked at you up in that choir today. And I noticed that how strong you appeared." And he said, "I felt bad about having told you that, because all this time he's been saying that I'm weak, you know, that I'm not strong enough, I have to know how to deal with things better." And he said, "You really are dealing with this." And I think that maybe, and I've been whining about the fact that I couldn't go back to work, that I need to stay home with Jarrett and whatnot. He said, "I think that you actually do know what you need to do and what you don't have to do. And I think that your life is going to be a help to somebody."
Even if I don't make it and do die, I don't fear dying. I know I've lived before and that I'll live again, and that my life will have done some good.
The meeting had, as I said, 11 members. There were 2 ACT UP members there. I was there talking about housing, and Tom Larango was there talking about...
Losing Scott made me realize that I needed to do something about AIDS, and realized that there was a real problem with homelessness amongst people with AIDS. And knowing that, I had a lot of skills in renovating buildings and stuff like that, I decided that I wanted to develop AIDS housing.
And get some goddamn attention paid to this issue, the level of attention that it requires.
I have a really good life, I have a wonderful husband, I have a great kid. Work is a little difficult right now because of, I've been sick so often. But I mean, and the important things that count, which is to me family, I have more than I could ever have, wished for. So I consider myself real fortunate. A lot of people never have that, their whole life.
I'm gonna kill you two! Oh! Daddy! Oh!
In another way, it makes me really mad. It's like I finally got what I've wanted all my life, which is a really wonderful family, and I'm going to be really pissed off if it gets taken away, before I'm ready.
What do you say, twice?
I don't know. Let's just wait. Oh,
It's all right. Everything is fine.
oh no.
Give me your glass.
This is a mistake.
What?
This is a mistake.
1,
2, 3.
2, 3.
I personally don't think it's a manageable illness. Do you feel that it is, Peter?
I'm not sure that it's not. I'm not sure that it's not. I think that we really have gotten into all new levels of management. I mean, I'm witnessing people living longer and longer and longer and longer, even after the diagnosis, not after the infection, but after full blown, as they say, AIDS. They're living longer and more successfully with richer lives. So I do have a sense of longevity, increasingly so. I don't think that that's unrealistic. The thing that drives me crazy is people responding to the latest information in various media, and they say, did you hear about that? Did you hear about that? It was on the television last night. Do you think that's going to be the... I said, I don't listen to anything on the television. I just can't get my hopes up over, Chinese cucumbers. I mean, people saying, where do you get them? Are there any Chinese vegetable stores? I said, they would probably make me nauseous or give me gas. I'm not about to get my hopes up over Chinese cucumbers, And there's always going to be another Chinese cucumber, okay? And, I mean, so the thing is that I'm a clinician. I work in a setting where conservative medical techniques are extending lives. We also, through all of these clients, realize that there are other means that people are using to make their lives healthier and more and richer. And so we have seen the Louise Hay tapes. We've seen the crystals. We've seen the oils and the healing groups. And as long as the treatments are not invasive or harmful to the individual, and the individual finds comfort in them, I think it's great.
But you don't go for them for you.
No.
No crystals in your bathroom.
Well, actually, crystals are lovely, and I would love a crystal. You should, if anybody's out there wants to give me a crystal, lovely, beautiful, pink, lovely, blue, beautiful. I like crystals. It's not very nice, but I have my own coping mechanisms. I want my pussycat. I want my, I like my videos. You know what I'm saying? I have my own relaxation methods and motivational techniques, and I'm not big for them.
Even this thing of the spiritual path can be a tight shoe. It can be like this place of burden. I've got to be spiritual. I've always got to be happy. I've always got to be aware. I've always got to expand it. I've got to be healing myself. I can't be getting sicker. I can't be blah, blah, blah. And my new goal is to be human. Is to really embrace myself as really, I'm a human being. I'm a human being. It's my right to have a shitty day. It's my right to have a cold. I'm a human being. It's my right to be a bitch. It's my right to be less than perfect. It's my right to be HIV positive. Even there. I can be loved even there. Even in something that my mind or this world has said is so ugly, that I could find a place to be gentle and compassionate with that and to love that.
When you say, what in my past, I really don't even think just my past as a child or my past as an adult. But really, for me, what's really sort of helped me through life have been figures through history. And one of the principal figures, it sounds a little crazy, but it's almost as if we have a dialogue at times. And it's not really a dialogue. I just see this vision of this human being, is Harriet Tubman. Whenever I feel low, I think of this woman who was a slave, walking through woods, being chased by hound dogs, pushing herself to find freedom and finding it, and going back into slavery time after time to take others back to freedom with her. And I think of tremendous risks and the tremendous courage that was required to do that. And that's enough. I mean, I could name other figures, but that's enough for me. And that's my past. That's the past that I draw upon. that helps me through this and will help me if, when, should I get sicker, and will continue to push me on to keep saying to me, one more step. We'll make it. Don't worry, child. One more step.
It's strange. Everything has changed, yet nothing has. I used to wonder, am I doing with my life what I should be doing? I still wonder, but maybe a little more. I used to worry about what was going to happen to the world. I still worry, but maybe a little less. I used to get depressed about my messy house. Still is. Sometimes I wonder how I'd feel if they found a cure tomorrow. The irony is that I think I'd be depressed. I've tried so hard to be realistic about things, to accept this change of fortune, that it's become a part of who I am. And if that part were taken away, I know there'd be something missing. I'd get over it, though.
For more information about HIV and AIDS, call CDC's National AIDS Hotline at 1-800-342-AIDS. Major funding for POV has been provided by the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation, the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, the National Endowment for the Arts, and viewers like you. Additional funding was provided by the Dayton Hudson Foundation, Kaiser Permanente, the Ittleson Foundation, the Gerbode Foundation, Wells Fargo, the Chicago Resource Center, and other funders. A complete list of funders is available from PBS. For a free copy of a viewer's guide to the full 12-week season of POV, call us toll-free at 1-800-321-3700.
This is PBS.